Hey, it's Chuck. Today, the first big name enters the transfer portal. Let's get it. And welcome in from Scottsdale, Arizona, Chuck on Buck Studios West. And I had quite an eventful day today, a really fun day, a total stroke of luck. The Fiesta Bowl is a bowl that I have always absolutely loved. And I loved it so much, of course, because our Buckeyes had one glorious night there and then another really awesome night, too. And those two teams that came out here and won those Fiesta Bowls were two of my favorite teams of all time. And today, I was strolling down the strip with my wife, pardon me, watching Nathan Bernard. Quarterback out of Ashland, 2026, top 100. Chip Kelly is going out to see him next week at Ashland. And this kid is 6'5", 227. He's got a real cannon, some really awkward footwork and kind of a funky release on a lot of his throws. But he's just a sophomore, so plenty of time to work with him. Anyway, we're rolling down the strip in Scottsdale, Arizona, and I stumble across the Fiesta Bowl Museum right in the middle of the strip between a restaurant and like an art store. I couldn't believe it. So this museum was bare, like nobody was there, right? Just me, my wife, and the lady that worked there, who said to my wife after I started walking around, and my wife just stood with her, "He really likes college football, huh?" And she said, "Oh, he does a college football podcast." Then the lady was really excited, like she had a celebrity in the house. I got the impression they did not get many visitors, but I don't know what the odds are of that. Like, I'm walking down the street and had no idea, and it happened. It was so awesome. Everything I ever dreamed the Fiesta Bowl Museum would be, and I didn't even know it existed. I got to see it live and in person. The coach's trophy, the crystal ball, and I pretended like it was Jimmy T holding it up. There was a Heisman Trophy, a real one, didn't have a name on it. I just pretended like it was Reggie Bush's. Every major award trophy was there. It was so cool. And listen, I took you guys a video because I said, what the hell? I mean, it's a 2-minute video. Let's roll through. This is my trip to the Fiesta Bowl Museum. Here we go. And I don't think he's going to throw the ball as much as he thinks he's going to throw the ball now that Chip Kelly's on board. And I'm happy about that. More quarterback. The truth is, Ryan Day has made a change philosophically, but it's none of those. You all know who wins. LSU is the drunkest fan base in the country. Hey, it's Chuck. I am at the Fiesta Bowl Museum, which I just happened to bump into. Who would have thought? And here we've got the Oregon uniforms. Of course, Oregon played Liberty in the Fiesta Bowl this year, and it was a real nail-biter. The Ducks won. Congratulations, Ducks, on your big win against Liberty. And we'll take you to some other sites here in the Fiesta Bowl Museum. We got the Kansas Jayhawk fella here. He wants some smoke, man. This dude's all up in my grill. UNLV from their game they played. And up behind me here, the Buckeyes and Canes National Championship game banner to commemorate that, and the other 4 national championship games that took place in the Fiesta Bowl over the years. Always love the Fiesta Bowl. We're the kings of the Fiesta Bowl. I kind of miss the bowls meaning something. It was always a whole lot of fun for me. And back here is the best part of the museum. The greatest and most memorable games in Fiesta Bowl history. Of course, the Buckeyes' victory over the Canes, and a commemorative jersey, along with the Arizona Republic's newspaper clippings the day after the game. Pretty cool stuff. When you walk in here, it's the first time I've ever seen these awards life-size and in person. But we've got the Eddie Robinson National Coaches of the Year Award, the Lombardi, the Coach's Trophy, the Doak Walker Award, the Bronco Nagurski, and the Bolitnikoff. The Bronco Nagurski is a massive trophy, and the Coach's Trophy, absolutely gorgeous. I love it so much more than the lipstick one. Over here we got the wall of helmets. There's our Buckeyes right there in the middle, as they should be. Nice picture over here of Krenzel scoring. Little Shane Olivier, Sean Taylor, black and white. And here's the Heisman, life-size and in person. It looks big. It looks heavy. I don't think it's coming up on the video as big as it looks in person. You got the Outland Trophy, which is very small. The Jim Thorpe Award. Here's the Butkus. And the Davy O'Brien. And that's my tour of the Fiesta Museum that I just happened to bump into. What are the odds? I don't know. It's crazy, but happy I did. Talk to you guys soon. Juck and Bucks out. So we left. My wife rushed me out after that video because she was embarrassed that I shot that video. But I'm telling you, the lady loved it. She was very flattered that I took a video, and I think she was just happy to have a visitor this week. And yeah, it was pretty cool. So when we left, we took a driverless Uber, a Jaguar, and there was no driver. So I took a picture of that too, and that was a funky experience, being in that car with no driver. They say they're not listening to you, but I don't believe them, so I was still talking quiet as if there was a driver up front. A really awkward experience, but you know, it drove pretty well, but it does drive exactly the speed limit. If it's 25, it's going 25. I generally go 5 miles over, and I appreciate that 5 miles from the Uber driver. This thing, you know, it was pretty slow. However, it was better than yesterday's Uber when my wife put in the wrong destination and we went an hour out of the way. That was not cool. And yeah, that sucks. So anyway, Doug Lesmerises, absolute legend, did an exit interview essentially today with Gene Smith. Now, I'm going to start by saying that I think Gene Smith is a good man. You see the way people around him respect him, the way they talk about him. And I enjoyed having him as the guy who was out in front of the program, a respected leader, a guy that, you know, everybody around the country really seemed to admire. I always thought that was pretty cool. I do have some problems with some things that he did, but I think he's a good man. And I liked having him as the guy that represented the athletic department. Obviously, he made some mistakes. But let's go over a couple of things that Doug asked him and some of the answers that Gene gave. And I'm just going to kind of weigh in as we go here. So on the potential of the Super League, that's the 70-80 team one, Gene said he hates it. He made it clear that Ohio State is okay sharing revenue with lesser Big Ten teams, but has no interest in sharing with lesser teams that have no history with Ohio State. And this is what I talked about when this idea was first floated. Obviously, it never had legs anyway because it was proposed by a bunch of hucksters, but it never had legs. But I talked about it anyway. In the Big Ten and the SEC, who have all the control and all the power, it makes no sense for them to bring in 70 teams to then split their revenue with these teams that aren't going to bring in anything. And it was just never going to be a thing anyway. So Gene basically says, you know, what everybody knew anyway. On an NFL style revenue system, he said it won't work because Ohio State makes more and wants to spend more. He said he thinks Ohio State should be the Yankees. He certainly did not think that the first few years of NIL. And I got a big problem with him about the first few years of NIL. He said he always wanted to share money with the Big Ten, but in a world that includes paying players, he wants to be even more ruthless. As it should be. Know who you are and act accordingly. One of the first things that the new leadership said when they came in was essentially, we're Ohio State and we're going to swing a bigger stick. We're going to act like Ohio State. And that was something that we talked about, and I love it. I think it's the right attitude to have this day and age because, you know, it's a tumultuous time and you need to stay out in front of all this stuff. And Gene dropped the ball with NIL for the first 2 years. There's no doubt about it. It was not a lack of funds. It was Gene telling donors not to divert funds to NIL, to keep it in the athletic department. His bloated 36-sport athletic department, for comparison, I think Alabama, I did an episode on this, Alabama has like 18 sports. Having 36 sports in the athletic department is something that Gene Smith was very proud of. He wanted it to be his legacy. And that, along with the fear of doing something wrong and getting popped for something wrong in NIL, kept him from embracing it. And instead, he kind of suppressed it. Now, everything's rolling now, and he says when asked about NIL that the first 2 years they played it cautious and then they embraced it. Uh, I think that's a little disingenuous. I think that Gene embraced it when the donors said, "This is where it's going. It's going to NIL, no matter what you say." And then Gene changed his tune and embraced it. Right. So that's my thought on it. You know, I think he dropped the ball the first 2 years on it for sure, and it's rolling good now. So what's it really matter? But of course, he made the massive mistake with Chris Holtman. Everybody knows. Some people think he made other mistakes with Urban. Obviously, he made a horrible mistake not taking the bull ban, the self-imposed bull ban that most likely would have been accepted by the NCAA as sufficient punishment for Tackgate. It's not for sure, but most likely. And had it been accepted, Ohio State probably goes to the national championship that year and plays Notre Dame instead of Alabama going and playing Notre Dame in Miami in a game I was at. And I can assure you, watching that team on the field and in person, we would have whooped their butt and had a national championship. Of course, that is contingent on the NCAA accepting that self-imposed bowl ban as sufficient punishment. It's not, it's not a guarantee that they ever would have, but there's a lot of people that hold strong that they would have, and Gene Smith cost us a national championship by going to that Gator Bowl. So that was a pretty bad move. Gene said the NCAA was horrible, and the reason for many of today's issues is that the leadership at the NCAA, and that's certainly true. The NCAA buried their heads in the sand at the start of all this NIL and transfer portal crap, and as soon as the California case went through, they did absolutely nothing to try to get in front of any of this. Instead, they just waited back and saw how it was all going to shake out, and then they got so far behind it that they became at the mercy of it. So that was Mark Emmert and his NCAA leadership. And of course, he's not there anymore. Charlie Baker's now in charge of the NCAA. And Gene feels like they are so far behind and so out of touch now that there's no way the model is even sustainable. And he's probably right. When he talked about the 36 sport program athletic department, he said it is going to have different expectations for the other sports. They're going to have to change the way they fund them. If they want to keep them all going, they're going to have to change their expectations. So what he's saying is he always wanted them to be championship level, and he funded them championship level. But to keep them all now, funds are going to have to come down, and they're not going to be expected to be championship level. Now, I don't think that Ross Bjork and Ted Carter are really going to end up keeping this 36 sport bloated athletic department, in my opinion. These guys are football guys. They know what moves the needle, and they don't care about having this massive. They don't care about the fencings of the world and things like this. I would love for Ohio State to have all those sports. I think it's awesome, but I also think there should never be a time when the football program needs something that they don't get. Football is king in the state of Ohio. Football is king for all of us, and we want the money to go into football. So, I mean, play intramural fencing. I don't know what you do there, but when you look at the other blue blood programs, none of them are like this. This is not how they're structured. Ohio State's on an island here with like Stanford. This is not normal for a blue blood program to have this enormous athletic department with all these little niche Olympic sports and such. This is not a normal thing. I don't know how it became a thing, but I'm happy if it goes away. And I think that Ted Carter and Ross Bjork, reading between the lines in their introductory press conferences, are not too keen on keeping it this way. Even if they have made Gene feel like they're going to, I think 5 years from now, they will reevaluate, or maybe even sooner than that. When asked about facilities, Gene said he never really viewed it as an arms race, but there are a lot of new departments, the recruiting department and other departments that are now housed in the Woody Hayes Athletic Center, that didn't even exist when the Woody Hayes Athletic Center was built. So there's basically just a need for a lot more square footage, and they have people working as in their closets as offices, 8 to 9 people in some instances. And we've seen that. We saw that Keenan Bailey on a little documentary they had recently, that Keenan Bailey was working in an office, or his office was inside a closet for a long time. And I mean, that's pretty embarrassing. So they have proposed the plan to the board of trustees, or they're going to propose a plan to the board of trustees for the facilities plan. And I think he said May. And that's going to be kind of the preliminary thing to get the ball rolling. And they're also going to reach out to some mega donors and get their feedback on if they can do this or not. Now, I'd expect a lot of these donors have pumped in a lot of money into NIL recently. So, maybe they're strapped, or maybe they're super excited with the way things are going right now, that they will help pony up for that. But again, if you don't fund all these other sports, you don't need so much money from all these mega donors. So regardless, they're going to make it happen one way or the other, and they're going to get new facilities, which, he even brought up the lipstick on a pig kind of thing. What they've done now, I think 3 major renovations with like 7 or 8 years in between. And it's time. So that's great. But when we look back at Gene's legacy, I'll remember him fondly, because I think he's a good man. And while he made mistakes, it's not an easy job, and there's a whole lot of ways that he did things right too. So I could probably go through and highlight a lot of those, but they just don't pop out off the top of my head. I'd have to sit down and think about them. The things that always pop out in our heads are the things that go wrong. It's just the way we're wired. But all in all, a good man, represented the university in a good way, I always felt. And, I wish him the best of luck. I think he's a good dude. The last 20 years, there's been this real kind of push to take young kids and put them in one sport, find the sport they're good at, and really push them in that one sport, instead of kind of, I don't know, like when I was young, when you were an athlete, you just kind of played all the sports, and you kind of whittled that down as you got older. And now you see a whole lot of parents kind of pushing, whether it's travel baseball or they're good at football. The kid shows promise in one sport, and they drill down on that. They get private coaches, agility work for that particular sport, etc., and they focus on that one sport. The kids in football, it's football all the time, year round. They're working with private coaches like Julian Sam when he was in grade school. The skill guys are playing 7-on-7, and the kids get really good at football. And many times they don't love football. They love what comes with football, the adulation, the attention. We see it all the time with skill players. We see it all the time with big men. The amount of big men who get pushed into football just because they're big is staggering. If you've been involved with football at any level, pee-wee level, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You probably know the type just from high school. Just dudes that were big, that were on the football team, that you're like, you talk to them, they're just not, that's not them. And, they get pushed into it because they're big. There really is a sizable portion of kids who play football at the high school level who just really don't like the sport at all. They play for their parents, they play for what comes with it. And it's tough, man. Football is different than a whole lot of sports. I guess you could throw in hockey and rugby in there, but they're not very popular where we're from. Football's a painful sport. It just hurts. It flat out hurts every day. It's an ankle, it's a knee, it's a wrist, it's a finger, it's bruises everywhere. It's not for everybody. There are so many people who play football who don't love the sport, man, in high school. And it makes it very easy to spot the ones that do, because there's so many that don't. The ones that light up on the field after contact, that seek it, contact out play after play. The type of dudes who would strap up in a parking lot. I was talking to my buddy the other day about Carmani McLean, the dude that transferred out of Colorado. And I think he's a perfect example of what I'm talking about. He's a guy who is really good at football and doesn't like football. I watch college prospects like, I don't know, all the time. Like somebody else might scroll Instagram. I scroll 24/7. And sometimes I see a guy and I just say to myself, that dude loves football. They just pop off the screen. They're just having fun and you can see it. And unfortunately, in a lot of cases, these guys aren't always the most talented guys. And you know who I'm talking about. You know, the overachieving type. But when you see a guy who is really talented, who also has that kind of attitude, that's a dangerous dude. That's a dude everybody wants to play with. That's a dude you want on your team. And Shekai Mills-Knight is such a dude. We talked about him a few weeks ago when Carlos Lachlan was hired. Coach Locke had been recruiting him in Oregon. This dude's 6'2", 220, out of Tennessee, originally out of Quebec. And then he transferred down to Tennessee after this school in Tennessee saw him post this footage, I think on Instagram, actually. So they recruit him down to Tennessee. He goes down to Tennessee to go to this high school, start playing football. And he is just a bruiser, an absolute bruiser. He looks to me like he's probably going to play college football at about 235 when he gets a little bigger. The type of back, the type of running style, I didn't realize I missed so much until Coach Locke started talking. And then I went and looked at this kid, and I just started thinking, gosh, man, I miss this style of running back. I don't feel like it's been a while. It's been a while since we've had one. Mayan Williams had a little bit of that in him. But, you know, I think back to Carlos Hyde, and I was like, yeah, I miss that. Give me some more of that. And this dude's a 3-star. Now, in my opinion, that's a result of an ankle injury that kind of kept him down for a good portion of time last year. The clips of him are limited. He's not a 3-star talent. There's a whole lot of nonsense and politics that goes into these rankings sometimes, and exposure goes into it a ton. You look at a guy like Deshaun Stewart, safety for the Buckeyes in the class of 2025. You know, this dude wasn't on the 7-7 circuit, and he's up in New Jersey, and you know, both of those things hurt you. And because of that, I think he's lower ranked. It's another reason that the law in the state of Ohio, from the OHSAA being changed to allow spring ball, is going to help a lot of Ohio high school football players to just get noticed and get recognition. Helps their ranking. Your ranking matters to, you know, it gets eyeballs on you. It helps coaches, you know, evaluate. They all look at that stuff. And I'm not talking about the best of the best schools. I'm talking about MAC schools and such. I mean, like, you know, they don't have departments that can go out and do a ton of their own scouting. They rely on a lot of this stuff. And it makes a difference. But you look at Shekai Mills-Knight, who was playing in Quebec until he transferred to Tennessee. I mean, that's going to hurt his exposure, hurt his recruiting rankings. He's not a 3-star talent. Last week, On3 took the number 3 cornerback in the country and moved him ahead of Devin Sanchez and Naeem Offord. Now, nobody's playing football. These guys didn't change size. The film didn't change. How is it that this guy jumped ahead of them? Some kind of politicking involved? I don't know. I mean, if you think about it, like if you're the number one cornerback by a recruiting service, could that be worth some more money in an NIL deal? Could there be some kind of back channel dealing? I don't know. But why is it that On3 always seems to lower Ohio State players as we get closer to signing day or past signing day? It just seems like every time these guys get closer to getting in Ohio State, we've always kind of seen a Buckeye bump from like 24/7 rivals. When dudes come into Ohio State, I used to call it the Bama bump, but we started kind of getting it too. And it feels like On3 kind of goes the opposite way. I think last year they started with 3 5-stars in the class or 4 or 5 stars in the class, the Ohio State class. And by the time it was over, I think they had 1. But seeing this dude jump over Devin Sanchez and Naeem Offord really irritated me. But my point is, there's a whole lot of stuff that goes into these rankings. And, you know, sometimes it's not always on the up and up. And Shekai Mills-Knight is not a 3-star. So that's the major point. The dude's a beast. Anyway, this guy now has Locke was interested in him, right? And a lot of people didn't like that. They thought that it may scare off Jordan Davison or Marquise Davis or Bo Jackson. Listen, he needs a backup plan. He needs a couple because he's too smart to get caught with his pants down like Tony Alford did and end up with no back in the class. That said, I think this dude is a great plan. And Locke has now offered him. And we know Locke wants a physical running back. He told us so. And I think he wants a big bruiser like this. And I don't think this is the only big bruiser that he's intending on bringing in the next few cycles. And I love that. Shekai's now got offers from Ohio State, Alabama, Oregon, Miami, Ole Miss, Florida, Tennessee, Auburn. You get the idea. Everybody's on him and they want him bad. And we're talking about a 3-star, and they're all on him. So not really a 3-star. His lateral quickness, his jump cuts, very high level for a dude that size. He delivers the blow. He doesn't take it. Hard running back, man. Really hard. Certified beast. And he fits in perfectly with what Locke wants to do, I think. We don't know for sure, but I think. He can catch the ball. He's good in pass protection. Granted, he's as big as all the defensive players that are coming to rush, but he likes it. You can tell he likes it. He enjoys it. And he passes the does he love football eye test. That's for sure. It's not immeasurable, but you can see it and you just know it when you see it. Now, you may think that's nonsense. And to a certain extent, I could agree, but it fires me up when I see it. And I love it. Now, the top end speed is not great with this kid, but if he had the top end speed, he'd be a 5-star, right? That's rare to be that size and be that fast. So it's fine. It's not his style. It's not the type of runner. It's not what you use a guy like that for. But I do think he can be, he's not just a niche player. He's not some goal line back. He can be an every down back, I think. So he's got his Buckeyes offer. And according to Steve Wiltfong, the Buckeyes are at the very top of his list. And now keep in mind, pulling him would be a big pull out of the South, right? He's in Tennessee, and he's got the entire upper echelon of the SEC after him. So Lachlan still has his work cut out for him here. And if he were to be able to get him, it would mean maybe that things went wrong with Bo Jackson or Jordan Davison. But he's up against the SEC with Shekai. Bo Jackson was just down at Alabama and Georgia, so he's up against them with Bo, though he is in state. And then he's up against Texas with Jordan Davison. So, and Michigan with Marquise Davis, though I think Marquise Davis is pretty much out of it. But he's got his work cut out for him, like all different angles he's in these fights. And that's why I think this is so interesting that we're seeing him come in a limited time, in a short cycle. And we're going to get to see him go up against all these areas and see what he does. It's going to be really exciting. And it could end up being really impressive. And, we might just have another superstar recruiter to join James Laurinaitis, OG Walt, and Brian Hartline. And that would be fantastic. Anyway, I was watching some of Shekai Mills-Knight's highlights, and there's a lot of stuff in those highlights that a guy his size can't do at the next level. You get away with a lot of stuff in college, in high school, that you can't get away with in college. So I broke down some of his plays and kind of took out the stuff that doesn't really translate for me. And I kind of put together a little mash of my own. And it's the first one I've ever done. So Shekai Mills-Knight, check him out.
Back position. And like I tell people all the time, your running backs are going to take on the mentality of the guy that coaching them. I'm a dog. My guys play like that. They're disciplined, they're going to play hard, and they know I do not play. We're going to be a physical bunch. Simple as that. Real dog. physical bunch. Simple as that.
Real dog.
That's a bad dude. And keep in mind that guy's going to be about 235. And when you look at his picture, I mean, you can tell he's still got a lot of maturing to do. A guy like that, moving like that, seeking out contact, grinding dudes out, you can tell how much he loves to play. You really can tell. And I want as many of those kind of guys on the football team as we can have, because that play is infectious. It really is. Now, moving on to some transfer portal nonsense. I was on offensive line watch again today. I just want to go through this with you guys real quick. So, with the exception of Jason Zandamela, who we talked about last week, that is the transfer portal, the guy who entered the transfer portal from USC. He was a freshman guard, and he was third string at USC. So aside from him, there has not been one single four-star guard yet to enter the portal, all 3 stars. And aside from Caden Proctor, 5-star tackle from Alabama, then Iowa, then back to Alabama, there has not been a single 4-star tackle except for one from Washington who entered and then went back to Washington. So currently on the market, there is not a single 4-star lineman for Ohio State to look at. Now, that doesn't mean you can't find yourself a good 3-star, but what that does mean is I'm just going to say that there's nobody on here that is an upgrade, and there's not many selections even when we talk about these 3 stars. The pickings are slim, real slim pickings, and nobody on here that would make me think would be in the 2 deep right off the rip, to be honest. George Fitzpatrick is a better rated lineman than all these guys, so it's not looking good for that. And you know, it is what it is at this point. So it was pretty much what I expected, but I did think there would be 2 or 3 at least pop up, and there still probably will be. And they got to get after him and get after him hard. But the first big-ish name to enter the portal today, Jaden Rashada, Arizona State. He started 2 games last year before he missed 9 from injury. He was a freshman. He was also injured again this spring. He's a quarterback, by the way. So many ASU reporters said that he was going to lose the starting job to transfer quarterback Sam Leavitt, but those reports didn't come out until after Rashida announced that he was going to go in the portal. So sour grapes, maybe, very possibly. Here's the guy that broke the story.
Sam Leavitt was going to win this job. Sam Leavitt, I think the writing was on the wall through spring ball that Sam Leavitt was going to win the job, and Jaden decided that he was going to transfer out. And this is what happens.
Yes,
this is what happens.
This is just what we were talking about.
I will tell you that ASU is going to hit the transfer portal right now to bring in another quarterback. So expect ASU to hit the transfer portal to bring in another quarterback. But through spring ball, and Jaden missed a little bit of it, I think it was very clear to everybody on that team that Sam Leavitt was going to be the guy. They just out-recruited Jaden Rashada, to be honest with you. They out-recruited. I had heard a lot about when, because I broke the story on Leavitt being the guy coming here, and I expected that Leavitt was going to be Jaden Rashada out anyway. I did, and it seemed like through spring ball he was ahead. I think Jaden probably saw the writing on the wall and decided that I want to go somewhere that I can play because I'm a big-name guy instead of being the backup quarterback to Sam Leavitt.
So if you're not familiar with Jaden Rashada, it's one of the wilder NIL stories, and it happened early on. So here's the timeline. June of 22, he committed to Miami. Then he decommitted to Miami in November and flipped to Florida. December of 22, he signed his letter of intent with Florida. January 23, he decommitted from Florida. February 23, he committed to ASU. And now, April of 24, he enters the transfer portal. His brief commitment at Florida was filled with controversy, as he was one of the first names who was reportedly enticed with big-time NIL bucks to commit to a school. The collective at Florida promised Rashada up to $13.8 million with $500,000 up front and 6-figure payments every month as long as he remained with the school. The contract was totally absurd. I can't remember the details now, but I remember reading it when it first came out, and it was really funny to read. There was a whole lot of funny notes. And I'm sorry I'm unprepared. I should have pulled this up and read this to you, but just trust me. It was a ridiculous contract. It was so ridiculous that this Florida collective that put this stuff together is now defunct. It's not even in operation anymore. It was just they didn't have the money. They couldn't pay him. He ends up getting out of his letter of intent. I don't even remember now. I don't even remember how now. Like, this dude is, I talk about NIL and I talk about transfer portal, and I try to be very non-judgmental because I try to put myself in the situation of being someone that age, and I was that age, and I was an idiot. I was a dummy. Like, I don't know how I would have reacted in this situation. But when we talk about the things that are good with NIL, like seniors like Jack and JT and coming back to school for their final senior year, I think that's good for college football in general, overall. I think it's good for all of us as fans, as viewers, even of other teams. And this has kind of been proven in basketball with the one and done. When you stopped knowing the players on the teams, you stopped caring as much. You don't get as involved. So when you get that extra year, those seniors coming back, not just at Ohio State, but everywhere, you recognize the players more. You feel more connected to the game, to the teams. And it helps college football as a whole. Additionally, it helps those guys and entices them to come back for one more year, hopefully develop their draft stock a little better, and it helps them in the long run make more money. And it's the best thing about NIL. And the worst thing about it is the Jaden Rashadas. That's just what it is. So whether or not this guy was starting and he lost his starting job and he wanted to leave, I really don't think that's the case. I think that that somebody has offered him some money to come to their school, and he has bailed out on Kenny Dillingham, who is my dude. And Kenny Dillingham is the Arizona State coach who has become my dude after this clip.
You know how many people want my job? Like, you know how many people want my assistant coach's jobs and my analyst jobs and the QB and the GA's jobs? So don't complain about what we do. You're blessed. There's a lot of negative of it, yes. But you know how many people want to be a college football coach? I literally spent 9 years of my life doing anything to become a coffee boy. So don't give me the, it's hard to be a college coach right now. Yeah, it's hard. Then quit. So, you adapt, you adjust, and is it hard? Yes, but if you love it, you're going to do it. Does it pull away from other things? Yes. Find a way to have life balance. Recruit the kids who understand that I'm not going to call you every single day because I'm going to go home to my kids and my wife. Like, find the balance that works for you, and it's very, very difficult because you never have to turn the switch off. You know how many people want my job?
And that dude's awesome. Now, word on the street is Jaden Rashad is going to Georgia. So everybody's going to jump to conclusions and say that Georgia was tampering and enticed him into the portal. So if he goes to Georgia, I think we can confirm that is what happened. If he doesn't end up at Georgia and he ends up at a lesser school than Arizona State, which is highly, highly doubtful, then that would mean that these Arizona State goofballs were correct, that reporter there. I think he'll probably go to somewhere of similar stature or maybe Georgia. It seems to kind of line up, but he's a very talented kid. I just, how do you, if you're going to try to use this guy as a rental player, he's not good enough yet to do that for you. Okay. He's not good enough yet. He's only, he's technically got 4 years of eligibility left. He only played in 2 games last year. So if he's not good enough to help you now, which he's not, and you're banking on him to help you maybe year 3, why would you think for a second he would be there? And you got to pay money for him to come and do what? Sit on your bench, add depth? I mean, it doesn't make much sense to me. So we'll see how that affects the market for him. And it's kind of an interesting case study. It's one that we haven't seen yet. And you know, there's always a sucker, right? So there will probably be one sucker who's going to pony up a bunch of money, only to have this kid walk out the door when the next deal comes on. And yeah, man, this is what's not right with this stuff. This is what I can't stand right here. And if he was going to be the starter, my guy Dillingham just got screwed. And I don't like that for my guy Dillingham. So I read this War Daddies article today on 247 on David Sanders, the big time lineman that the Buckeyes are after big. And this lady kind of did a deep dive on David Sanders and talked to him and the family about the three little sisters. And she puts in the article that, you know, if Ohio State was closer, things may be different. And I know that a lot of people have high hopes for this guy, but I really think this proximity thing in this case is really legit for him. So it's unfortunate, but again, we'd also be banking on Justin Fry to seal the deal there. And even if the proximity wasn't an issue, what would make us think that he would be able to do that? So I don't know. Anyway, that's my show tonight, guys. We will talk to you tomorrow. Chuck and Bucks out.